Hi guys and welcome. Today I'm going to be working on this little painting, and while I do that, I want to talk about trying new things in artwork. So I think we all have probably some degree of uncomfort with this subject, with this way that you attack it. So there's probably some amazing artists out there that they're just constantly pushing the boundaries, trying things that are really challenging, and it's just part of their artistic DNA. But I think a lot of us, we kind of have to remind ourselves or push ourselves to take that step into the uncomfortable area of art. So for me, what that looks like is I often get very trapped in the I need to produce this, I need to get it done, kind of this almost factory mindset. And I've talked a lot about that. I've been really working on getting past that, but it is something that it's just it's been years. So it's in there. It's in my DNA. So I'm trying to work through that. But I found that part of what comes with that is that I often choose the quote unquote safer, easier options for my artwork, things that I've done before, so I know that I can get it to a place that I'm happy with quicker, and I almost don't even have to think about it. I can just create it and get it done and push it out there. And I've been really craving that challenge that comes from trying new techniques, new subject matter that's more challenging, that I'm not as fully versed in, so it pushes me out of my boundaries. So yeah, I'm trying to open up the way that I think about and construct my pieces from the sketching phase, so that I can include elements like those things that will take some research or some practice or some preparation that I'm not used to. And I just I've been really wanting that to come back into my art practice. I think for a lot of us that was a lot more common for our early stages as artists. But for me, when I was much younger, when I was 8, 9, 10, and I was starting to realize that I really wanted to be able to draw things in a certain way, everything was new. Everything was a challenge. Drawing an eye in a slightly different angle than what I'd used to was suddenly this brand new thing that was just so almost insurmountable at the time. I remember really just redrawing over and over again, and I trying to figure out how it was supposed to be drawn in perspective, and I just could not figure it out. But when I finally did figure something out that actually kind of looked right, that was such a triumph. It was so exhilarating, and it gave me such a boost to keep working on my artwork, to continue to look for those things that I could advance and adapt. And it was fuel to the fire of my artistic love. So over the years, as I've gotten more competent at being able to get a piece that at least somewhat looks like what I had in my head, I found that it's much easier for me to not push myself past that, push myself into areas of discomfort where the thing that I'm working on may not actually end up looking good. I may not actually end up wanting to look at it at the end, and it might be, for me, considered a failure. This painting, titled See You Soon, is available at my shop. So if you'd like to get the original painting, he is actually ready to be hung right on your wall. That's what I love about these really interestingly shaped panels that I can work with, is that they're just so striking and graphic, and they're just ready to go right onto your wall. So he is ready to be adopted. There's a link in the description that'll take you over to my shop if you'd like to check that out. But yeah, let's get back to the topic. So all that to say, I crave that novel feeling that I had when I was younger. And I know that I can achieve that with art. There is no ceiling, really, I believe. There's no ceiling with skill that can be found in art. There's always something that we can learn, and that we can learn to do a little bit better. And I find that very exciting. I want to tap back into that rather than being in this autopilot that I've been in for years. So I'm going to give myself that thought. Every time I start a new piece, I can think about what's something, even something very minute, that I can be intentional about, that is new and is going to have to take me out of the routine so that I can break it down. I can learn something new before I start painting it, whatever the process needs to be, but I can be much more intentional about that step, that element in the piece. I definitely think that this, like everything, needs to be in balance. There are things that we just know that we love to draw, to paint, whatever the case may be, and making intentional choices to appreciate and enjoy and just dig into those things that we love, I think is a very important part of this process. To not move past things that are actually staples in our artistic path, but looking for things that actually can fill up and build that direction that we're going in, that we actually want to be in. So I have brainstormed some benefits that I can see from this. I'm sure some of these are super obvious, but I like to have my lists. I like to think things through. So one of the big benefits of just trying new things is that I find that my art gets better overall. The more I'm being intentional about small things, the more I realize that I'm starting to look for ways that I can improve in other areas that I wasn't even paying attention to. So I think it's just one of those like incremental things. The more attention you give to it, the more you're going to get out of it. There's the benefit of, if you learn a new technique or effect, you can have that's in you now. You've practiced it, you've learned it, you can use it in future pieces. So as you plan out pieces, you have that arsenal in your toolkit. Whatever analogy you want, you can pull that out and use it in new pieces, and it can start building and shaping the way that your art looks overall. And it can add to it. It can just give you more things that you can pull from. I also find that and I'm speaking specifically with oil painting since that's what I am learning and diving in with, but I found that when I've tried new techniques, I understand like the core base level of that medium so much more. So in this piece, I'm working on this neon light glow effect. So it's taking me a lot more practice and trial and error with it. But as I'm doing that, I'm learning a lot more about how the different paints that I have, how those behave, which ones are more opaque and which ones are more transparent, and how that affects things like this, like the glow and how they mix together. So I'm finding that I'm just exploring more than I normally would if I hadn't tried this effect. And because of that, I'm understanding like the white pigment that I'm using. I'm understanding it better. So I know when I use it in my typical application of it, I'll have a better understanding of why it behaves that way. And I think it can keep art more fun. I found that when I'm opening myself up to experimenting, it feels like play. It feels like I am testing things out and seeing what happens. And it feels a lot more like I'm just getting immersed in the process of creating it. And it just takes me back to the present moment of creating an artwork rather than trying to look towards the end. So it's more fun. It feels more fulfilling. And you can't quote me on this because I don't know where this concept comes from. I don't know if it was like a study, but I have heard that the more novel things we experience in our life, the slower our perception of time is. And I thought that was such an interesting thought. So like, if you were to go to a different grocery store than you normally would, that would just change the way that your brain would have perceived that week. It would have slowed down. It would pay more attention to the details of that new store that you're in. And it feels like that week just lasted and lingered longer. And I think that's such an interesting concept of being able to make some intentional choices that reclaim time back to ourselves. I feel that so intensely as I'm getting older and older. I'm feeling like time is just kind of slipping by with the lack of intentionality. So to bring it back to art, I feel like if I'm doing more novel experimental things with each piece, I think that that's just bringing more of that into my life. It's bringing more things for me to pay attention to grow from, and to observe. And I like that. Overall, I feel like I'm moving into the next phase of my artistic journey. I'm feeling so much more creatively charged. I feel really excited about experimenting, about where I can push my artwork, what new things I can do. I have things in my head about styles that I want to try to bring into little piece by piece into my work. It feels like a really good time. And this is the right time for me to start honing my skills, trying new things, and then seeing what things I really enjoy painting. So like this piece, this neon effect, I would love to get better at that. I love painting these glowing butterflies. It's a motif that I have in a lot of my pieces, but it's a skill that I don't feel like I'm particularly comfortable with or well versed in, and I want to learn how to do it better. So the better I can do it, the better I can get my ideas out there. So let's talk a bit about the new experiment, the thing that I did in this piece. I love talking about the practical steps that it takes for making a piece too. So this one, I wanted to learn how to paint a neon glow. I've done similar effects, but nothing quite so very specifically on the nose with wanting it to be lit like a neon light. And I definitely have not practiced it enough to feel like I understand it. So this was a little bit of a kind of testing the water, seeing what it does feel like to paint it. So my approach was a little inconcise, I would say. So I kind of shifted it around as I worked on it to try things out a little bit differently. So this was much more like a feeling it out kind of an approach. But I knew that I needed the core part of the light to be the brightest and the lightest, which I mixed up to be just a little bit less bright than white. So I tinted it with the purple. And then I had a nice kind of a light mid-tone purple mixed for the glow that would be immediately around what would theoretically be like the light bulb of the neon light. And then I wasn't really sure how I wanted it to blend it into the surrounding things. And that was kind of the area that I felt like I was the most unsure of, and therefore the area that I shifted the most as I painted it, I guess is the best way to put it. So I believe that when I first started off, I was trying to blend that mid purple color into whatever color was next to it, so that there was more of this hazy blend to it. But ultimately I decided that I preferred more of a laid down approach where there wasn't necessarily this soft blend, but I would lay down the paint with a little bit more of a thicker intentionality. And I laid that mid color down, and then I mixed a little bit of a step between that and the color that would be behind it, and then I kind of just blocked that in, and then I had the background color, and I was much happier with that. It ended up feeling more like the eyes would fill in the rest. It's like the eye would see that as a glow, and it looked a lot sharper, I guess. I found that it was a lot less muddy. It looked intentional, so that's where I landed with. I ended up kind of repainting all of it so that it matched a little bit more that stylistic side, where it was a little bit more just blocked in. And that's actually something that I've been noticing I'm enjoying more with oil painting than I thought I would. And that's being a little bit more painterly, maybe, with approaches with certain areas and certain techniques, rather than trying to get more of a careful blend, if theoretically there would be one there, laying down colors in this stepped approach and in a painterly way. I find that I'm often much happier with that result. So that was an exploration in that vein too, of more of a general artistic style. But yes, I was practicing my neon glow, which I found was very, very fruitful. I learned a lot on this painting. And don't forget, See You Soon is looking for a new home, so he's available right now. There is a link in the description that'll take you over there if you want to check out the listing for this original painting. And that is it for today. So thank you guys so much for watching and chatting with me as I think about art stuff. I love talking about the artistic pursuit, but that is it for today. So I will see you guys next time.